My younger brother, Jake, had an affair with my fiancé, got her pregnant just before our wedding, and my parents sided with him over me. This situation is as chaotic as it sounds, and while there is much to dig into, I'll try to summarize as best as I can. Whether or not anyone believes this isn't my concern. I just need to get it off my chest. I won't sugarcoat anything, and I'll leave out details that could reveal who I am. Up until a few months ago, I was engaged to my girlfriend of 5 years. Let's call her Emily. I'm 32, and my younger brother, Jake, is 29. He's always been the golden child in our family. To understand the weight of this betrayal, you'll need some background on our family dynamics and how we got here. Jake could do no wrong in my parents' eyes, while I was constantly criticized for the smallest mistakes. It wasn't just typical sibling rivalry or mild favoritism. It was blatant. If Jake broke something, I was blamed. If I got into a fight with him, I'd be grounded while he'd get a new video game. If we both got straight A's, I'd get a good job, but Jake would get praised and rewarded. My parents, Tom and Linda, always had some excuse for their actions. Jake needs more attention. He's the younger one. Or, you're older. You should know better. It made me feel like I wasn't enough, like I didn't matter in my own home. As we got older, the favoritism only grew. When I earned a partial scholarship to a good college, my parents barely noticed. But when Jake decided to attend community college, they threw him a huge celebration and even bought him a car, while I had been biking 5 miles to work and school for years. After high school, I moved out as soon as I could to escape the toxic environment at home. I worked 2 jobs, paid off my debts, and put myself through college. Jake dropped out of community college after 1 semester, saying it wasn't for him, and my parents praised him for knowing himself and rejecting societal norms. Over the next 5 years, they funded his series of failed business ventures. Despite the distance I tried to create, my family always found ways to pull me back in. Holidays were a nightmare of passive-aggressive comments and constant comparisons. Still working at that entry-level job? Well, Jake's thinking of starting another company. He's so entrepreneurial. Through it all, I tried to maintain a relationship with Jake. He was my brother, after all. But our relationship was always one-sided. I'd try to reach out and connect, but he'd either ignore me or find ways to turn our conversations into competitions. If I got promoted at work, he'd suddenly have a new big opportunity on the horizon. If I started dating someone, Jake would magically end up in a committed relationship as well. I met Emily through one of my attempts to reconnect with Jake. She was friends with one of his short-term girlfriends, and we clicked immediately. Emily was smart, funny, caring, and stunningly beautiful. Everything I had ever wanted in a partner. We started dating, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly happy and loved. But my parents were less than thrilled. They questioned why someone like Emily would be with me, making snide comments about how she was out of my league. Jake, on the other hand, seemed overly interested in my relationship with her, always asking about Emily and wanting to know everything about her. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I was just happy he seemed to care about something in my life. Looking back, I should have noticed the red flags. After a year of dating, Emily and I moved in together, and things were perfect. We both had stable jobs, and we talked about our future together. For the first time, I started to believe that I could have everything I wanted. A successful career, a loving partner, and maybe even kids one day. On our 4th anniversary, I proposed to Emily. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a quiet dinner at home and a heartfelt speech. She said yes, and I felt like I was on top of the world. We decided to take our time planning the wedding, figuring we had our whole lives ahead of us, or so I thought. When we told my family about our engagement, their reactions were less than enthusiastic. My mom forced a smile and said, "Oh, how nice," in a tone that implied it was anything but. My dad muttered, "Good luck with that," before turning back to the TV. Jake's reaction, though, was the strangest. He congratulated us, but his smile felt wrong, almost predatory. I brushed it off at the time, blaming it on my own anxiety, but in hindsight, I realized that was the moment I should have known something was off. As the months passed, work and wedding planning consumed most of our time. Emily started acting distant, always on her phone, smiling at texts from someone she claimed was just a work friend. She began spending more time out with friends, coming home late smelling like cologne and wine. I trusted her completely, so the thought of her cheating on me, let alone with my brother, never crossed my mind. Then, 4 months ago, everything fell apart. Emily had been acting strange. Mood swings, restlessness, and bouts of nausea. I thought maybe she was pregnant, and the idea filled me with excitement. We hadn't been trying for a baby, but we had talked about wanting kids one day, and I was ready to step up and support her. One evening, she sat me down, tears in her eyes, and dropped the bomb. She was pregnant. For a moment, I was stunned, shocked that we hadn't been intimate in a while because of our busy schedules. But when I asked who the father was, her response shattered my world. It's Jake. My entire existence crumbled in that instant. Everything I thought I knew, everything I had built my life around, came crashing down. I couldn't breathe. All I could feel was the overwhelming sense of betrayal. Emily tried to explain, sobbing between hurried words. It had started at our engagement party, she said. Jake had cornered her, telling her she was making a mistake by marrying me. He preyed on her insecurities, convincing her that she could do better, that he could give her everything I couldn't. They had been having an affair for months. It wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a full-blown betrayal. I told Emily to leave. I couldn't even look at her. The woman I had loved, the woman I had planned to marry, had been lying to my face for months. She begged for forgiveness, said it was a mistake, said she loved me, but all I could think about was how many times she had been with my brother while wearing the engagement ring I had given her. After Emily left, I called Jake. I don't remember much of what I said. It was all a blur of rage and heartbreak. At first, he tried to downplay it, claiming it was just a drunken mistake, but when I pressed him, he got defensive. Maybe if you'd been a better fiancé, she wouldn't have come to me, he snapped. That was it. I saw red. I got in my car and drove to his apartment, not sure what I intended to do. But when I arrived, my parents were already there. Jake had called them first, spinning some story about how Emily had seduced him, and he felt awful about it. And of course, my parents believed him. They always did. My dad stood there with his arms crossed, looking disappointed in me. My mom immediately launched into a lecture about family and forgiveness, insisting that I needed to support Emily through the pregnancy and forgive Jake because family comes first. That was the breaking point. Years of pent-up anger and bitterness came pouring out. I told them exactly what I thought of their twisted sense of loyalty, how they had always favored Jake at my expense, how they had never once stood up for me or had my back. I told Jake he was dead to me, that he wasn't my brother anymore. And as for my parents, I told them they could keep the son they had always wanted because they no longer had me. I drove for hours with no destination in mind, just trying to escape everything. When I finally got home, I had dozens of missed calls and messages. Some were from Emily, begging for another chance. Some were from Jake, alternating between apologies and blaming me for everything. But most were from my parents, demanding that I grow up and forgive my brother. I ignored them all. I took time off work, used all my vacation days, and holed up in my apartment, avoiding everyone. I couldn't face the world, couldn't explain what had happened. I spent weeks replaying every moment of my relationship with Emily, every interaction with Jake, trying to figure out where I had gone wrong. 3 months have passed now. I've changed my phone number, moved to a new apartment, and started therapy to cope with the aftermath. My family won't leave me alone, though. Despite my best efforts to cut them out of my life, they keep finding ways to ambush me, showing up at my job, leaving messages with coworkers. My mother cornered me in the parking lot one day, crying about how I was tearing the family apart. My father left me angry voicemails telling me to man up and forgive Jake. Jake has tried to approach me a few times, but I've managed to avoid him. I'm determined to keep my distance from the chaos they've created. I've started looking into relocating to another city, somewhere I can start fresh, away from all the memories and drama. My mental health is fragile, and I need to protect myself from from further pain. The idea of a new beginning is growing more appealing by the day. I want to escape this nightmare and find a place where I'm not constantly reminded of the betrayal. Every time I think I'm starting to heal, I see updates about Emily and Jake's new life together, and it feels like a knife in my gut. The anger and hurt still linger, but I'm also exhausted. I'm tired of justifying my feelings, tired of reliving this trauma. It's time for me to focus on myself and my future. I'm ready to close this chapter and start anew, wherever that may lead me.